Welcome to our homestead. Today we're going to tell you about 10 organic sources of nitrogen that you can find on your homestead without having to go to the big box store and buy those synthetic fertilizers. Let's talk about it. Now, wintertime is the perfect time to think about amending your garden, if it's not covered in snow, of course. Down here in Texas, it's cold, but we don't have anything impeding us from working on our garden and getting that soil ready for the planting season, which for us starts very soon. So let's head into the greenhouse and first talk about why nitrogen is so important for your plants. And if you are nitrogen deficient in your soil, you're going to have all kinds of trouble growing food for your family. Now, the reason nitrogen is so important is it's the main fuel source for your plants. It creates lush green foliage and stems. It is used in synthesizing amino acids, proteins, chlorophyll, and enzymes in the plant. And they use a ton of it for photosynthesis. And as you can see here, if you have a nitrogen deficiency, it'll stunt or halt the growth of your plants. It will also weaken the plant, giving the opportunity for bugs to attack it, because insects usually attack weak, sickly plants first. Now, it looks like these radishes grew well, but you can tell by the yellowing leaves here that there is a nitrogen deficiency in this bed. So behind me, I have many different sources of organic nitrogen for your garden. I picked up many of these on the homestead. I did purchase 2 of them, but if you have a large enough homestead, it's possible for you to make those on your homestead as well. And let's start with those 2. The first one here is organic fish emulsion. Now, if you have a large property and you've got a lot of fish stocked in your pond and you don't use them for anything else, or if you use them for food, you can utilize the guts, the bones, and all the rest of the stuff to make fish emulsion, then you're good to go. But of course, I had to purchase this one. And if you're making it on your own homestead, then it's probably going to be organic. For this, you have to seek out the organic versions. I'll put this one in the description below for you. Now, not only does fish emulsion have a high nitrogen content, it also contains great levels of calcium, sodium, chlorine, sulfur, magnesium. It's really an all-around great addition to any garden. The second one that I did purchase, but if you have a large enough property you could grow it yourself, is alfalfa. Now, alfalfa, along with another green organic that I have right down here I'll tell you about in a second, is probably the highest nitrogen containing chop and drop that you can put on your garden. Now, if you can find it, alfalfa meal is better because it's ground up. You have a lot of surface area, it gets into the soil quicker and into the plants quicker. And a lot of people are doing videos on alfalfa, adding it to your garden because it is so potent with nitrogen. So I can just spread this out on our beds, or I can do this to it, and that is to make a compost tea. Now, the benefit of using a compost tea is that the nutrients from that steeping of whatever material you put in here gets directly to the roots and instantly, pretty much, as soon as the roots start drinking up that water, instantly into the plant. This is a very fast way to add nitrogen to your soil, and it's really nice because it spreads out throughout the soil. So if you have a sick garden with a nitrogen deficiency, making a compost tea is one of the best ways to get it up to health like that. Now, I said I was going to tell you about another green that is really high in nitrogen that works really well as a chop and drop in your garden. And I also do make compost tea out of it. And I've done a video on that before. Check out at the top of the screen. That is Comfrey. We grow Comfrey for 2 different purposes. 1, it is an amazing fertilizer. And 2, it's also a medicinal plant. Now, you can do that chop and drop just like any other foliage fertilizer. But like I said, making a compost tea is actually pretty easy and it gets that nitrogen quickly into your plants. So if you go watch our video on making the Comfrey fertilizer, cutting it up into small pieces increases the surface area, it breaks down quicker, and the process goes much faster. So you want to do that. You can also tear it up and put it down here when you do chop and drop it. And you can do it any way you want. It's a great fertilizer. Now, I know what you're thinking to yourself right now. Eric, where is the manure? Well, it's right here. Now let's talk about manure for a minute. Of course you know manure has such a high nitrogen content in it right after it's deposited that you do not want to put it on your garden because it will just burn everything. It's what they call hot, and you don't want manure that's too hot on your garden or you're going to lose your vegetables. And that's why most manure, like this goat manure right here, you have to let it compost down through a hot process usually for at least 6 to 8 months. But that's a totally different video. Now we get goat manure from a friend of ours. We have chicken manure, which is actually the highest nitrogen content out of any of the manures. Now the chicken manure is at the top of the scale, and it's got about a 9% nitrogen content in it, and some of the other manures are down at about 4%. But all of them you want to let compost first, except this one. And that's rabbit manure. Rabbit manure is unique in that you can put it directly on your garden right after it's deposited from your rabbits. And that's one of the reasons why we're getting rabbits this coming spring. And of course, I'll take you along for that whole journey as well. Now, the really cool thing about having these manures is that you can also make a manure tea. So just like the compost tea, utilizing water and letting the manure sit in there for an extended period of time, you are gonna put those nutrients throughout that liquid and it will be an instant shot, almost, to all of your plants. So I recommend making some manure tea. So I've got something here that actually wasn't on my original list, but when I was getting ready and prepped for this video, I was like, wait a minute, this is a fantastic source of nitrogen for your garden. It is a manure, but it's not what you're thinking, and that is worm castings. Now, we did a great video on how to easily harvest worm castings and create them on your homestead without any special equipment. So check that out at the top of the screen. And naturally, worm castings have about a 4 to 5% higher nitrogen content than your regular soil. Now, two that kind of go together because they are the most common for everybody to be able to produce and gather on their homestead are grass clippings and leaves. Now, of course, we know that grass clippings are high in nitrogen, and putting grass clippings around your plants is a great way to get that nitrogen to them. It is less than the alfalfa, so if you have the opportunity to get the alfalfa or to grow it, that is much better. But not a lot of people know that leaves are actually a good source of nitrogen as well, and they break down very quickly. Now, we make pure leaf mold compost here on the homestead, and that actually gets that nitrogen into the soil quicker because you can just till it into that top third. It's like a soil itself. But when you have dry leaves like this, you can use them as a mulch, but they will get that nitrogen to your plants. Now, if you're a coffee drinker, coffee grounds are great for your garden. They have about 5% nitrogen by weight, and they actually put it into the soil quite quickly because you can add them to the top of the soil, kind of grind them in there, and then water them. And of course, just like steeping in your coffee maker, they will leach that their nutrients down into the soil fairly fast. So if you're not a coffee drinker, you can head to your local coffee shop, and they are more than happy to get rid of giant bags full of used coffee grounds. It's pretty easy to obtain them. Now here's one everybody's going to laugh about, but it is actually an amazing source of nitrogen for your garden, and that's human urine. Now this is just a prop, I didn't pee in a cup. And do not put it straight on your garden because it will burn out your plants as well. Just like with animal manure, it's really high in nitrogen, so you have to let it settle out for a while. Put it in a plastic container and let it sit around for a few weeks, and you should be good to go. Now these last two sources, you should only have to purchase once. So if you've purchased them once and then regrow them on your homestead, they're free after that. And those are cover crop mixes and beans. Beans are an amazing way to add and fix nitrogen into your soil. And that's why they are a great companion plant for heavy nitrogen feeders like brassicas, like cabbages, broccolis, etc. And you also get the benefit of eating them afterwards. That obviously goes for peas and legumes in general, which is usually what's contained within a package of cover crop along with clover, mustards, daikon radishes, and something called hairy vetch. Now I know what you're thinking, wait a minute, he's leaving two things out, and yes, I'm doing that on purpose, and that is bone and blood meal. Now while they are both high sources of nitrogen, especially blood meal, I do not recommend them. And that is, even if you can find organic sources of them, or what they say is organic, it is because disease is harbored in the blood and bones of animals. And that's just a fact, and I don't want that anywhere near the food that my family is going to eat. Now I know it works well, but it's not going to be in my garden, and I'd recommend that you don't put it in yours either. So those are my top recommended sources of almost all free organic sources of nitrogen for your garden. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. We'd be happy to answer them for you. Now go check out these videos right here, which show you how to build a greenhouse like this by yourself. Have a great day. We love you. See you next time. Bye.